Hello, friends. It is Dr. Bree, and I am so excited to be here tonight with you all for T4 Talks, for our teaching tidbits from Tots to teens. And we have a very special guest lecturer tonight. It's Dr. Nnenna Agim, and Agim, right? Say it
Yes.
for me, Nnenna.
Agim, you got it.
Agim. Okay, so Nnenna Agim, who is a dear friend, even though I can't pronounce her friend or her name, but friend all the same. And she is also a brilliant pediatric dermatologist, somebody that I just feel lucky to know and to have as a colleague. So Nnenna has trained as at UT Southwestern for medical school, internship, residency in dermatology, and I got to meet Nnenna when she came to Baylor, Texas Children's for a pediatric dermatology fellowship. And it was just such a blessing to be able to work with her and get to know her. And I will tell you, this girl can teach. She has got the gift. So we are in for a good treat. I'm so excited about her topic of childhood contact dermatitis. Again, one of the most brilliant pediatric dermatologists I know is going to take it away. It's all you.
Oh, Dr. Bree, thank you so much. It's a privilege to connect with you again, to be invited to talk on this series. I'm so excited. I know we love all things peds and we love dermatology, and this is a chance to talk about both of those and talk about something that's important and common, but not always recognized. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Today, I wanted to talk to you about conquering childhood contact dermatitis. Rashes tend to make parents concerned. Nobody wants to see their child scratching away at their skin, especially if they've tried over-the-counter hydrocortisone, tried a variety of different topical emollients, and the child is still uncomfortable. We know that especially for younger children who cannot communicate what they're feeling, this may be manifested as fussiness, as a disruption in their sleep patterns, and that affects, the whole family's vibe. So contact dermatitis is one of those sneaky things that can contribute to discomfort in children and can modify the appearance of or persistence of different skin eruptions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this topic and review clues that you should always be aware of when you're approaching the examination and treatment of a child presenting with a dermatitis. Keep in mind, could contact be involved based on the history in the presentation? And then we'll talk a little bit about what we can do about it. So I don't have any conflicts of interest related to this topic, and some off-label use of medications and or devices may be reviewed during the talk. Contact dermatitis is something that is increasing in prevalence in children. It's estimated that one out of every child who is 14 and under may have some degree of contact dermatitis. Now, this can be mild in its presentation or severe. Usually it's the severe presentations that may come in, but sometimes even for children with mild but persistent dermatitis, you want to keep in mind that contact dermatitis may be a factor. There's a lot of interest in families to use natural products for skincare, for caring for the hair and caring for the home, but unfortunately, these may be the sources of the exposures that cause contact dermatitis. And then children are naturally inquisitive. They explore, it's part of the way they develop and grow, but that also places them at risk for coming in contact with things that can trigger their dermatitis. There are many areas that children are exposed to. The infant is mostly around the home. As they move on to school age, you have additional exposures within the school environment. And as they get older, the teenagers have even more environments that they're exposed to and more opportunities for contact with agents that can trigger dermatitis. In younger children, you have to also consider what the caregivers are exposed to, because they can transfer the agents that the caregiver is exposed to can be transferred to the child. So a lot of people are like, why would a child have contact dermatitis? I thought that was something that happens after you've been exposed for a while. in older kids or adults, but there have been studies performed to show that contact dermatitis can occur as early as 3 months of age. And it may be that exposures in the hospital environment and exposures from the caregivers are the initial introduction. And then when you have cross-reactants in daily care products, this can trigger in susceptible patients contact dermatitis very early on in childhood. A number of different studies talk about the most common things that you can react to, and there are a few players that keep coming up again and again. Nickel, the metal nickel, is consistently number one. In this particular study, potassium dichromate, cocamidol, propylbutane, cobalt, and neomycin were other ones. And the methylchloroisothiazolinone and methyl isothiazolinone preservatives are also very huge players for children. Contact dermatitis is more common in children with atopic dermatitis. And in those children, nickel is also number one. Neomycin, which is available over the counter, a very common topical antibiotic that we reach for, when children have cuts and bruises. That is another common source. It's number two. Fragrance. Fragrance is huge. There's fragrance in everything, especially in things that are labeled natural. Sometimes it's just fragrance, sometimes it's botanicals, sometimes it's plant-based, it's dye-free, preservative-free, but full of fragrance. Fragrance is a huge one to think about. And then lanolin is the contact allergen of the year for 2023. And it's found in a lot of topical skincare products. Cap B or cocamidol propylbutane is in a lot of baby shampoos. And then we'll go over the others kind of as we go through the talk. But there are a lot of things that are very, very common exposures. They're everywhere and a lot of things that you don't think about, and they can contribute to the dermatitis presenting in a child. So the American Contact Derm Society puts out a contact allergen of the year every year and have done so for a while. And these are agents that are recognized nationwide to be causing either a high prevalence of contact dermatitis in both children and adults, or they're a new or emerging agent contributing to contact dermatitis. And so listed here are the contact allergens of the year from 2005 through 2024. All of the ones that I've highlighted in yellow are the ones that are on the top 10 list for children. So you can see that these allergens are really important. They're prevalent in the pediatric population. They're really important enough to become contact allergens of the year. And like I mentioned, for this year, lanolin is the allergen featured. Cap B was featured in 2004, bacitracin in 2003. And the ones that have the little hash mark by them are also more common in atopic patients. So I mentioned that atopic patients have very common, a sort of set of allergens that they're very commonly positive for. The unfortunate thing is that whenever we see patients with atopic dermatitis, we're always telling them to put something on all of their skin every day. Because we're making that recommendation, we have to keep in mind that contact dermatitis is not something you're born with. It's something you acquire over time, and you acquire it by exposing your immune system to these agents. So if you give an atopic patient a topical emollient or a topical prescription that contains a potential allergen, they are a perfect setup for sensitization because they're applying that product every day, sometimes twice a day for months at a time. So it's recommended that with atopic patients, you're very judicious about your selection of, what soap they use, what moisturizer, what topicals you're prescribing, because you're having them introduce this agent to their skin over and over again, and you don't want to set them up to develop an allergy that they didn't have to begin with, or they're already known to be at higher risk for. A lot of the allergens that are more common in atopic patients are allergens in the products they use on their skin on their hair and in their home on a daily basis. Sometimes contact allergy is seasonal, so you want to keep that in mind, depending on what time of the year the patient is presenting for you to be seen by you. In spring, there's certain plant material that's more available as people are tired of winter and they're going out and they're exploring more. They may be coming in contact with these things that are more available around springtime. A lot of people are into gardening and landscaping at the time. Some people are planting, paper whites and narcissus and daffodils, and those bulbs are one of the sources of contact dermatitis that's prevalent during the spring. During the summertime, a lot of kids are involved in outdoor activities, and the sports gear and the swim gear that they use during that time could be a reason why they have contact dermatitis in certain areas. Car trips are very common in the summertime, and if someone is using, for example, a diffuser with fragrance or an air freshener in the car, and a kid is taking a long car trip or road trip, that could be a setup for developing a particular type of contact dermatitis. During the fall, a lot of people get dressed up. We just came past Halloween. Face paint, Halloween candy, those things contain potential allergens for the fall season. And a lot of the pumpkin spice blends contain potential allergens for susceptible patients. And then in the wintertime, a lot of the decorations that are brought out, a lot of things that have to go with hot chocolate, nickel is in hot chocolate, those things can be another source of seasonal contact dermatitis. For allergens like nickel, you can get a dermatitis not just from contact with the skin, but also from ingestion of the metal. Most of the time, no one goes out and decides they want to have a nickel meal, but nickel, again, is very prevalent in a lot of different things. Again, because young children are curious, if they swallow a metal object with nickel and have a nickel allergy, they can present with a systemic or systematized contact dermatitis, where rather than having a geometric erythematous plaque in an area of contact, they have a whole body dermatitis, as in the baby pictured here. Hand dermatitis can be seen with contact with metal chairs or bicycle handles, and then certain foods, like I mentioned, like hot chocolate, walnuts, lentils, raspberries, all contain nickel. And so if it's a time when a child is eating a lot of these foods, they can have a systemic presentation of their contact dermatitis. So these are common ones that can do that. This is an imaging of a child who swallowed a coin and had this persistent all over body dermatitis until that coin was passed. I mentioned, nickel's in a number of foods. Cobalt also is in cocoa, apricots, beets, cloves. Balsam of Peru is in a lot of foods that kids like. It's in ketchup, it's in chocolate, it's in pizza. And then carmine, it's interesting, is one of the contact agents that can be seen in things like things that are dyed red, especially with natural red dye. Carmine's in red velvet cupcakes, it's in popsicles, it's in artificial crab, it's in ruby red grapefruit juice. So keep these things in mind if a child is presenting with a whole body dermatitis that isn't behaving like you expect on traditional therapy. So in infancy, like I mentioned, it seems odd that children should have dermatitis that early, but there are a lot of exposures that a child is exposed that places a child at increased risk. Babies usually spend a good portion of the first few months of their life in a car seat. One of the patterns that was identified by a pediatric dermatologist locally here was something called car seat dermatitis. It presents with erythematous scaly plaques on the limbs and the scalp in areas where the baby's body is in touch with a shiny material in a particular brand of car seat. It's worse in the summer, we think, because the heat and the occlusion from being in the car seat releases more of the allergens. There was an attempt made to get the materials in this particular car seat, but the company declined because it was proprietary. So there's speculation about what could be in the material that's causing the dermatitis, but we don't know for sure. Everybody loves baby smells. um, Baby smells that are coming naturally from the baby are yummy and expected, and we want those. But baby smells that we try to perpetuate by using certain products can contribute to contact dermatitis or make it worse. A lot of products that are marketed specifically for babies and marketed as gentle, unfortunately, contain a lot of things in the top 10 list of allergens that children are susceptible to. So baby detergents, baby diapers, baby washes, a lot of those, especially with the promotion of natural ingredients, contain fragrances or surfactants that can contribute to contact dermatitis. Even the ones, again, that are marketed for gentle skin, when you look at them, highlighted here are the ingredient lists for a variety of common body soaps and washes that are used. All contain Cat B, and some of them also contain fragrances. A lot of sensitive skincare products, like I mentioned, may have ingredients apart from Cat B and fragrance. Eucerin, for example, contains lanolin, again, the allergen of the year, as well as MCA and MI. Those preservatives that I said are becoming a more important contact allergen. So you want to keep in mind, if you have a patient who has contact dermatitis, making sure that even if they're using a product with the label for sensitive skin, they read the labels to ensure that it doesn't have the ingredient, for example, that you identify on a patch test. I mentioned that sometimes contact allergy can be transferred from a caregiver to a child. The girl pictured here was actually being worked up for child abuse, but had contact dermatitis from citrus fruits that were transferred from fingers to the face and along the neck. And we know that citrus fruits cause phytophotodermatitis, where rather than classic erythematous scaly plaques, the addition of UV light causes actually erosions. Sometimes it looks like the skin's been burned in the areas where these agents are applied, whether accidentally or without, malicious intent. A lot of times, phytophotodermatitis tends to be linear, which is a clue as to kind of what's going on there. But other things, caregivers love to love on their babies, and so the hands and the lips, anything that's on the hands and the lips of the caregiver can be transferred to the child and cause contact dermatitis. This is an example of a baby who the mom, again, was preparing foods that contained the allergens in citrus fruits, and you can see the finger pattern on the thighs where a dermatitis was being generated by exposure from the parents' hands. The babies snuggled up, on their caregiver's chest, on their caregiver's face, by their caregiver's hair. So if the caregiver is using, shampoo with fragrance, hair dye, nail polish, perfume, those things can be transferred to the child. I remember having a child one time who had a really bad dermatitis. We did patch testing. She was positive for cobalt, and she'd been spending time at a friend's house where there was construction. Cobalt's in drywall. So anytime you have drywall dust, that can be a source for exposure. And then her father also worked in construction. So they had to have him take off his work clothes before he came into the house, so he didn't keep bringing in large amounts of her identified contact allergen, and then her dermatitis got better. This is a child who had, this is a case about a child who had contact urticaria from a lip plumper that the mother was using. And they showed, this is not the child, this is the parent, they showed replication of the dermatitis by applying that lip plumper on the skin. In the classroom, there are other agents to think about. This is a hand dermatitis that's triggered by slime. I'm sure you know what slime is. It's a viral trend where there's this viscous elastic material that you can make yourself or you can buy. And a lot of the ingredients used to make slime contribute to contact dermatitis. So it can have fragrance, it can have preservatives, and now people make textured slime where they add plastics, rubbers, and metals to the slime, and all of those things should be considered. Um, Methyl isothiazolone, the preservative, is one of the things that can cause that can be in homemade or commercial slime. But it can also be in other things you may not think about. Apart from, we talked about soaps, creams, shampoos, detergents, slime. It can also be in paint and wallpaper. It can be in glue, and it can be in bubbles. So often when a child is expected, there's renovation or redecorating in the child's nursery or in the child's room. So one of the questions we often ask in patients presenting with suspected contact dermatitis is, have you guys painted the house recently or done any remodeling, redecoration? Because if a paint that contains MI is used, the walls can emit that allergen and cause a diffuse dermatitis for up to 30 days after that painting has been done in the room. Sports, we mentioned that, older kids start to get involved in a lot of activities. Shin guards are a recognized source for contact dermatitis. This pattern will be limited exactly to where the shin guards are applied. You can have a separate id dermatitis, especially in an atopic patient, but with sports gear, the dermatitis is geometric and matches the shape of the gear being used. Shin guards can cause both irritants and allergic contact dermatitis. When it's allergic, it's related to the rubbers in the shin guards, and acetophenone azine was also recognized as one of the reproducible contact allergens in shin guards. Shoes, all the athletic shoes that are used for a variety of sports can cause a significant plantar dermatitis. This again can come from the little sachets in the shoe box to keep the shoes fresh. It can come from metals in the decorations on the shoes. It can come from dyes in the socks used in the shoes or from the materials used to make the shoes itself. So patch testing can help distinguish what exactly in the shoes or socks that are causing the dermatitis. And then with avoidance and use of things like topical steroids, you can reverse the dermatitis for the child. Bubble parties are a thing, and bubbles contain preservatives, fragrance, dyes. You can rent a truck to come have a bubble party for fun, and I have had a number of atopics go to a bubble party and come back, even though they were well controlled, come back with a flaring dermatitis all over. So ask where the child has been, how they're having fun, and see if that could be contributing to their contact dermatitis. During the pandemic and after, and in classrooms now even, a lot of people are using diffusers. And diffusers either have essential oils or a commercial fragrance that you put in something that warms it up, and then it disperses that agent throughout the environment, whether it's a room, a home, a classroom. The problem is that whenever these agents like linalool, which is in the lavender type or floral fragrances, mixes with air and oxidizes or is heated, it becomes an even more powerful allergen. And it can trigger a dermatitis that looks windswept on the face, but can involve the whole body, especially areas that are exposed and not covered by clothing. Fragrances come in all forms. So we ask about car air fresheners, what's used to clean the home. We ask about wipes for furniture. We ask about odor blockers in shoes, wax melts, plug-ins. And then for teens, they have a lot more that they can be exposed to, whether it's looking for trends that they find on social media that they want to use, or things that their friends are suggesting to them that they use. This, for example, is something that's really popular right now, using a snail mucin essence on your face. And it's marketed here as free of fragrance, color, silicone, polyethylene glycol. But it does still have acrylates in it. And acrylates are a type of glue which some kids are quite allergic to. teens try a lot of things, cosmetics included, and this can be anything from makeup, lip gloss, lip plumper, hair products. Kids who, for example, who had atopic dermatitis as babies got well controlled, were doing great, and then present with flaring in their in the teenage years. You want to think about whether or not they're exposing themselves to something new, and a good history can help direct your contact allergy investigation and help you choose either to advise preemptive avoidance of the things that could be contributing, or direct your patch testing to prove what's causing the dermatitis. So these are examples of patients with exposure to ingredients in lip gloss or lip balm, which include clove, cinnamon, menthol, beeswax, and cat B again. These things can be in other oral care products apart from lip balm. So mouthwash, throat sprays, hard candies, you want to ask about those things. Also, some of these ingredients, like the waxes, can be found in gummy vitamins. So a child might have gotten rid of the lip balm and other things you advise, but ask also again, what are they ingesting? Because that can be contributing to the eruption. Getting your nails done, getting piercings, getting tattoos, some of the other things that teens do are additional exposures that could trigger contact dermatitis. Paraphenylene diamine, or PPD, can cause reactions, both classic and photo-induced, in temporary tattoos. Acrylates, which I mentioned are in snail mucin, are also in artificial nails. And some children will present with actual full dermatitis of their entire digit, and not just the area where the nail chemicals and nail enhancements were applied. And then uniforms, both uniforms for school and uniforms for jobs that some teenagers choose to have, including jobs in gaming, can also contribute to contact dermatitis. Dispersed blue dye sometimes presents with a purpuric dermatitis, which is a special presentation that should be considered in teenage groups. I've had a couple kids, one who wore a lot of dark denim and one who was working at a restaurant that required a black uniform, that presented with this diffuse purpuric style dermatitis. Patch tested positive for dispersed blue, and staying away from the dark clothing caused complete resolution of the dermatitis. And then gaming devices, whether it's cell phones, laptops, consoles, headpieces for virtual reality games. The areas of contact with these devices will be the areas of presentation for the dermatitis, and the most common culprits are the metals, so nickel and cobalt, and then things in the rubber used for either the device itself or its protective casing. The area, again, where the device is being applied is the area where the dermatitis will be seen. And then I just wanted to wrap up with mentioning a few either hospital-specific or chronic illness-specific forms of contact dermatitis that you may encounter. Mastosol is something we use to adhere steri strips to the skin after surgery. But for some children, they could be allergic to that, and you'll see a dermatitis around the area where that gel is placed. And then in the hospital, a lot of times, because children are not bathing, skin barrier wipes are used to cleanse their skin, and that can trigger dermatitis. Those wipes typically contain MCI and MI, the preservatives. And then for children, for example, who have type 1 diabetes that have to wear an insulin pump or a glucose meter, isobornyl acrylate is a recognized contact allergen causing a dermatitis around the devices. So I want you to keep contact dermatitis in mind whenever you see a child with a dermatitis in a specific part of the body, when the dermatitis is geometric or linear, when the dermatitis fits the exposure history. And then if you want to prove that the contact dermatitis is there, patch testing is your friend. You may have to modify how you do patch testing in children. One, if they have small bodies, you can't get all your allergens on them, so you may have to use not just their back, but their arms and thighs, or split the test and do half of the agents at one time and half of the agents at the other. You want to make sure you completely explain the full process to the family so the patches aren't removed early, the area isn't washed early, and you have a good result from your test. And there is a truncated series that's recommended in JAD. If you don't want to use the full panel, for example, of the 80 most common contact allergens we test for in extended testing, you can use the pediatric series, which captures most cases. And again, think about what the child is exposed to based on their age, their environment, the history, the pattern, and you may be able to solve a lot of problems for these children. These are my references, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
That was amazing. I don't see any questions in the chat. Let me look one more time right now before we wrap up. But Nnenna, that was so good. When you said you were wrapping up, I'm like, no, I've already learned so much. I knew when we got on this call, I would learn something. You really are the best teacher, and you're so brilliant.
Oh, goodness.
You're
Thank
so
you.
brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and who knew snail essence? I didn't know that. I haven't been practicing for a while, right? Like, holy cow.
Yeah. So it's one of the, I mean, it's one of the things we know on TikTok, one of the things that's trending is how to get glass skin. And so there's a whole protocol out there about how you have to double cleanse your skin and use certain essences, and snail mucin is huge. So I went to look it up and see like what's in it, and I've had a lot of patients ask about it too. And it's, a lot of these products, the problem is they market free of, XYZ. But then when you read the back of the label, it's like, yes, it's free of all of those, but what does it actually have in it? And so that one in particular, which is one of the most common, most popular ones right now, has acrylates, which you're like, what? Like, why would that be a source of acrylates, And so if someone, for example, I've had where someone had the reaction on their hands from nail procedures, and so they're avoiding those, but they're like, why am I still breaking out, and why am I breaking out my face? Then we start to ask, like, have you introduced anything new? Have you tried any new trends? And you'd be surprised what people will tell you that they're trying.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. And then
Yeah.
I think you are the one that had, when we were at Texas Children's, I had a kiddo that was nickel allergic, was really doing such a good job avoiding nickel. And it came out that this kid was drinking like 2 like cocoa type drinks from Starbucks every day. I think you were the one that got that out of him. And I was like, oh, this kid has a systematized dermatitis. Like, he was being so good with the external, but, and and we went over everything, but then, it was a Starbucks like Frappuccinos or something that had cocoa in them. Yeah, I remember that. And then the bubble party. Yes, I wish I would have had your talk before. We had a bubble party at Camp Discovery for the American Academy of Dermatology. Yeah, that was probably not the best thing that we could have done at camp, but the kids sure did have a good time. But yeah,
they have a good time. They do have a good time. And the thing is, like, we explained that we're not trying to take away their fun, but we have to like negotiate how to make them happy. For the slime, for example, there are a lot of kids who like, they're like, I can't live without slime. And so people are now making products that have slime contained within like silicone. So you can play with it without direct contact with the slime. So I'm like, you either have to wear gloves or you use the contained slime. Otherwise, stay away from it. And so you have to ask. A lot of times they won't volunteer. I had a kid who had a very bad hand dermatitis, had paronychia from the slime. When they took it out of the home, she got better. Her hands looked great. She was doing well for a while. Came back and started to come back, and we were like, her mom's like, I don't know. We got rid of all the slime. And she's like, but there's still slime at my best friend's house, and I've been playing with it. And so you have to ask what's in your house and what's in grandma's house and what's in best friend's house and what's in school, because all of the environments that the child is exposed to, the parents may be doing a great job at home, but ask about the secondary environments because that may be the source of exposure.
Yeah, so smart. Good tip. And then the other thing, balsam of Peru, which also goes by Peruvian balsam on this ingredient list. And I'm asking you to have ESP question, but it's something that people smear on their kids' rear ends when they have contact dermatitis or when they have
Yes.
diaper dermatitis. So Boudreaux's butt paste
Yes.
has Peruvian
Yes.
balsam. And I think,
Yep.
there's so many people that have balsam of Peru allergy when I test them as teens. And then I asked, did you use Boudreaux's butt paste? And it's a kid that, again, they had a barrier issue. It was in a contained area where they had the diaper over it, where it's just
Yes.
driving that allergen right into damaged skin barrier, right? So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that's always an interesting one that pops
Yeah.
up. And then I ask about Boudreaux's, and I swear every time I've had a kid that had balsam of Peru,
That
that's
is
what they
exactly
use.
right. That is
Yep.
exactly right. And the mucous membranes, I think, permit even more intense reactions. And, that's why I tell all my topics, I have a list of gentle skincare products. I'm like, just, I know you got the gift of the nice smelling baby basket, but we have to put that aside. And even if they're not allergic now, we don't want them to become allergic later. And
Yeah,
so just select the blandest everything and use that for now. And then, we'll save special occasion for special occasion. But if you're putting that on every single day, you spritz in lavender to help them go to sleep, using the nighttime, all the nighttime washes. Yeah, that's a setup for trouble.
Yep. And I love the fact, it's a PD derm talk when you can use the word yummy to describe the smell of a baby. I was like, I
Yeah,
love that word for the smell of a baby. That's so
yeah,
spot on. So spot
yes,
on. And then I have one practical question because I struggled with this in practice as far as the devices, especially like the diabetes monitors. Did you ever figure out a way to, because they really need that and it's so helpful and
yes,
it keeps your diabetes, like I could, aside from when they took it off and just rotating it, but then they end up getting it in other places. And it seems like they tend to cross react even if they change devices. That's so
exactly.
tricky. That's just really
Yeah.
tricky. Do you have any tips for that?
Yes. So what I did with that is a lot of times our classic topical corticosteroids in cream and ointment form are too sticky and won't let the device adhere to the skin properly. And so what I've found is that using something with a nasal formulation like Flonase or Nasonex, they can actually spritz that on, let it dry completely, and then reattach the device, and it significantly reduces the degree of the dermatitis. They still rotate sites to minimize, and then when they're off, they can treat the off site more intensely with like the ointment or whatever you want to use. But having that before they apply it, a spritz of the, Flonase, Nasonex, one of those things, it dries completely. It doesn't interfere with adherence, but it minimizes the dermatitis.
Pro tip. I knew you would have an answer. I knew it. I knew it. You're amazing. You're so
Oh
brilliant. You're
goodness,
such a good
thank
teacher.
you. Thank
Well,
you.
Nnenna, thank you so much for just, your knowledge and your willingness to share it with us tonight at T4. I can't wait to have you on in the future. We're taking a little break over Thanksgiving and Christmas. We'll be back in the new year, and hopefully we'll be able to get you on sometime soon at the beginning of the year for another talk, because that was just so good and I learned
Thank
so much.
you.
So
Thank you
yes,
so much. It
I
was
was
a
supposed to be your
pleasure.
teacher, and look, you're always teaching me. Things don't
We're
change,
always
even.
learning from each other, and our patients teach us so much, because
Oh yeah.
I really am grateful to my patients too, because we go on this adventure with them, trying to hunt down everything, and they're trying to do their part. We're trying to do our part, and it's always awesome when we can identify something and it changes everything for them.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you for helping kids love the skin they're in and for teaching us tonight. And I can't wait to have you on again next time. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank
Yes,
you.
you bet. All right. Happy
Bye.
holidays to everyone. We'll see you in
Yes.
2024.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.